Hey, it's Melissa from polkadotchair.com, and today I'm excited to start the Saturday duffel bag sew along. So before we actually start sewing, I wanted to go over some of the things that you might need, or things that you might want to know when it comes to like prepping the bag, and some decisions that you need to make before you start sewing. So the first thing you need is the pattern. If you are in the US, you can order a pattern that we ship to you. We're trying to ship out same day with the sew along coming up, and we ship first class mail. You can also get a digital pattern, which is delivered immediately to your email and is in PDF form. And a PDF is just a standard document format that you need an Adobe Acrobat reader to open. And Adobe Acrobat is a free program on the internet. Probably most of your computers and phones and things already came with an Acrobat reader. So there's like not any extra software you need to get or anything. All right, so you've got your pattern. It's either come in the mail or you've downloaded it and you've printed it out. So if you print it out, your pattern pieces will be at the end of the document, and they'll be like a puzzle. And all you have to do is put the pieces of the puzzle together and line up the squares and tape them with just Scotch tape. There is a photo in the pattern of what it should look like after they're all taped together. If you have a printed pattern, then you will get a large pattern sheet like this that you can use. On the pattern sheet, you will find several pieces, and I'm not going to leave this open the whole time because I feel like I don't know, might just make too much noise. Maybe we will. One thing I wanted to note that I've noted it on the blog post, it's on the pattern corrections page, and I've got it again in the video. When we had these printed, we did not realize that the words cut on fold were cut off on the edge here. So definitely I made a mistake with the proofing on that. So this piece, the pocket piece with the curve, should be cut on the fold. So it's just right here, cut on fold. There's a picture of it, and the correction is listed. All right, so you need to cut out several pieces of fabric for this bag. So you may be wondering, okay, the end of the bag is round. Why is my bag pattern side piece a rectangle, a square? Because here's the bag pattern side piece. So, and then you also have a circle template. This is not, don't cut fabric out with this yet. That is not what this is for, and it does note it in the pattern. So when you cut your fabric, you're going to cut all squares and rectangles, because it is going to be easier to cut these circles after a few of the pieces are sewn and your interfacing is applied than otherwise you'd have to cut like 15 circles, and nobody likes cutting circles out of fabric. I mean, I feel like that's pretty much a given. I don't like cutting circles out of fabric, so I definitely try and reduce the amount that you need to do when cutting your circles out. So that is why your bag side pattern pieces are rectangles, or squares, excuse me, and then you have your bag pattern piece. I'm going to fold it out for 1 second, and I'm going to fold it back up. Okay, so that bag pattern piece is a rectangle, and I've got noted on here dotted lines where you cut for the small, the medium, and the large bag. So just make sure as you cut that you, I think this is probably making noise in my microphone, so I'm going to fold it up. So just make sure that you cut it, all the small pieces, all the medium pieces, etc., and that you trace your pocket pieces small, medium, large. The other thing to note, everybody's different. When I would write bag sewing patterns, I would always write them with measurements, like cut a 12 by 15 piece of fabric, for example, which is not one of the actual measurements, but just FYI. And I would get emails from people that would say, this isn't a pattern, there's not a piece to cut out. And I was like, oh, it's just so much easier just to cut a rectangle of fabric with a rotary cutter and a ruler. So since then I have learned not everybody likes to do that. But if you are somebody that likes to cut fabric with a rotary cutter and a ruler instead of a taped pattern piece and scissors, all you need to do is just measure the rectangles on the pattern and cut your rectangles that size. That's what I did. So I measured on mine, I measured the rectangle I wanted to cut for the bag side piece, and then I just took a pen and noted what size that was, so then I knew what size to cut my fabric out. Also, you're not going to want to actually cut up the pattern fold out, especially if you bought a printed pattern, because if you want to make another size later. So what I like to do is just use tissue paper. This is tracing paper. You can buy medical table paper in a roll, and it's just simple. Just trace it onto your pattern piece and cut it out. And then, so like, for example, here's my small bag pocket piece. And then it's traced and it's saved for whenever I want to make another bag. So definitely you're going to want something to trace your pattern pieces onto, and that is noted in the supply section on the back of the pattern. So I want to just quickly run over the pieces you need to cut out for the pattern, just to make sure that you understand. If you're someone that feels pretty confident with, you know, sewing patterns and things like that, then you can obviously just kind of skip over this. I'm going to make sure I get all my pages in the right order because I was sewing. All right, so the cutting directions start here on page 2. And I have a couple of notes. So one of the biggest things, especially if you're working with directional fabric, is you need to know of that rectangle, what part of that rectangle makes up the width of the bag. So like this is the width of the bag. So as you can see, there's a piece of fabric that runs this direction on the bag, and then it wraps around and there's a seam on the bottom of the bag. So if you have a rectangle and you have that piece rotated 90 degrees, it's not going to fit your zipper. It's not going to fit, like, it's like a puzzle. It's not going to fit together. So I have noted on page 2 the width of each bag. So the small bag is 15 inches wide, the medium is 17 inches wide, and the large is 20 inches wide. And that is the width of the pattern piece. That's not necessarily the width of the finished bag, because that doesn't take into account seam allowance. But if you cut your piece out and you're looking at this big rectangle of fabric and you're like, I'm not sure which way this goes, then you can refer to page 2 and it will show you the width. So just make sure you understand which direction your fabric is facing. Okay, so just going to run over this very quickly as noted in the pattern. So you have your bag pattern piece on there, which is going to be your largest rectangle. You're going to cut 2 pieces from bag outside fabric. This is my bag outside fabric. You're going to cut 2 pieces from bag lining fabric. So in this case, the bag lining is polka dot. And you're going to cut 2 pieces of Shape Flex interfacing. Shape Flex is just a nice lightweight interfacing that helps prevent the wrinkling on the outside of the bag as we put it together. Then you are going to trace the round pattern piece. That's that circle template. You're going to trace it onto like tissue paper and you're just going to set it aside, but you're not going to do anything with it yet. You're not going to cut it out of fabric. So you're not going to cut any fabric out of that circle yet. Then on there you have a square piece that is your bag side piece. So from that piece you need to cut 2 pieces for your bag side. So in this case, my bag side is the dog's print, and 2 pieces from the bag lining fabric, which in this case is the polka dot again, and 2 pieces from flex foam interfacing. Then you have the pocket piece on the bag. So this is my pocket piece right here. It's a small floral. So from that pocket piece fabric, you're going to cut 4 pieces. I cut the same fabric on the pocket lining as I cut on the pocket. If you want a different fabric on the lining, that's totally fine. Then you'll cut 2 from the bag pocket outside fabric and 2 from bag lining fabric. It's just totally up to you and personal preference, and is another opportunity to put like a fun different print on your bag. So that's your cuts from your fabric. And then from the flex foam interfacing, you're also going to cut 1 large rectangle that you're going to adhere to your bag lining pieces after they're sewn together. And then you're also going to cut some other smaller pieces of fabric to use for the zipper tabs and for these tabs that we're going to attach the D-rings to on the side of the bag. The last thing you need to cut are some pieces of cotton webbing, which is what we're using on the bag for handles. I definitely recommend cotton webbing for that, not nylon. I know you might not be able to find cotton webbing in the store. You might only be able to find nylon, and you absolutely can use nylon. There is a thing you need to know about that though. If you use nylon, you cannot iron it. Like if you touch your iron to the nylon webbing, it will melt. So you can't. That's why I like to use the cotton better. You can find this at big box stores. A lot of quilt shops carry it, and I have ordered it on Etsy before. Here's like a stripe, and then I just wanted to show you on this bag, if you can't find like a cotton webbing you like, you can buy just the natural, and they for sure have this like at Joann's and stuff. Just use the natural webbing, and then I ordered some ribbon. This is like decorative trim ribbon, like Renaissance Ribbons makes it, and a lot of fabric designers have their own line of ribbons. I think this is Anna Maria Horner, and you can just sew the ribbon to the center of your cotton webbing to make it a little dressier if you don't want just plain cotton webbing. You need to cut a couple of pieces of fabric for bias strips that you're going to use to finish the sides of the pockets, and then you also need a zipper. I chose to use metal zippers for my bags because I think it looks a little more professional, but you absolutely can use a polyester zipper if you prefer. If you use a metal zipper, be very careful because as you press this project, the iron will make the metal zipper very hot, and you need to be really careful to make sure that you do not touch that metal zipper with after it's been pressed. And you also need to be very careful as you sew to make sure that your zipper is out of the way, because you don't want to sew over that metal zipper because it can damage your sewing machine. So I think that's it. I think I've covered a lot of stuff when it comes to starting to make this bag. For fabric, I just use 100% cotton quilting cottons. You could maybe use a very lightweight home deck, but I would definitely not use a heavy home weight deck. It would just get too heavy with the flex foam interfacing, and I will talk a little bit more in detail about some of the interfacing and pieces that you need for the bag when we move over to like the more detailed shots of starting to sew the bag and the cutout pieces as I walk you through making the bag. Let me know in the comment section if you have any questions. I will be on there all week trying to answer them. And if you like this project, I would love for you to share it with a friend, maybe a fun like end of summer, beginning of school sew along, and we will see you next week when we start sewing.